Hello, thank you for tuning in to our first episode in our Linux series. Today we'll be introducing some Linux and some simple commands to get you started. But first, let's answer some common questions. For example, what is Linux? Well, Linux is a clone of the original Unix operating system, and it consists of a kernel. The kernel is a core control software, and many of the programs and utilities in Linux rely on the kernel. Now, Linux also comes in many flavors or distributions. These distributions can sometimes be referred to as distros, and these distros are Ubuntu, Kali, Red Hat, CentOS, and the list goes on and on. Each of these distributions have particular use cases, or some of them have features that other ones don't have. So you may wonder why there are so many. Some have specialized software pre-installed. For example, Kali, which is typically used in the penetration testing environment. So sometimes when you're looking at these distributions, some of them are commercial, which means you have to pay to use them, or some of the utilities provided by them. However, many of the tools in Linux are free and even open source, allowing you to customize them to the maximum. So today, we're going to be going over Ubuntu, which is, as we mentioned, a common distribution. And Linux is something that you can find all over the world, from uh, refrigerators to automobiles to enterprise grade servers even. So there's really a lot of room for growth when learning about uh, the separate operating systems. And Ubuntu is commonly known for being used as a graphical user interface in a desktop environment, or Ubuntu server, which can be hosted in the cloud and used for various other purposes. So, how can we use it? Well, if you're just getting started, you could download Linux to a flash drive and edit the BIOS where it boots from that flash drive or USB in order to boot that operating system. And that's a dual boot feature, and that's how you can boot it off of your personal machine. But there are other ways to do this too if you don't want to go through all those steps. For example, you could download something like VirtualBox, which is free, and you'll be able to edit and customize virtual machines. And then you can download the Ubuntu image directly from the website and use the image of the operating system in order to create virtual machines and run it that way. You also can just enable it as the default OS on your system. But today we're going to be doing something a little different. So we're going to be using WSL2. That's the Windows subsystem for Linux. That's something that you can set up on your Windows system. And if you're using Mac OS, Mac OS is also based off of Unix. So a lot of the commands should still apply even if you're using Mac OS. Now, in this simple demonstration, we're going to be using Windows Terminal, which is a modern, customizable terminal application that can be downloaded from the Windows Store. This is the same that we use in our PowerShell series, except if you notice up here, we have this tab that I'm hovering over. Let me see. Oh, there's my cursor. If you click on this, it'll give you a list of options. And if you have a Windows subsystem for Linux properly configured, you should be able to, from that tab, select it, and it'll show you the options. And you can click Ubuntu. And if it's properly set up, then you'll get a page just like this one that we have displayed. And as you can see, I just booted it. So it's giving us some information such as we're running the long-term support version of Ubuntu. And it also gives us some information such as where we can find documentation, information about management support. And also, as it says right here, this message is shown once a day. There are ways to configure your environment where every single time you sign in, you may get a message or updates about the system. And that's something we'll go along and explore further in the series. But anyhow, we're just going to get started today. And I'm going to show you some simple commands that you can use to learn some more about your environment. Now, one of the most common commands used is ls. Let me show you. So if you type ls, enter, you can see that I've already created a test folder. And ls lists the files or folders in your current directory. Now, there are other ways to use this command, and it can provide more detailed information, and that's by adding additional parameters. And in this example, I'm going to show you a parameter that you can give that will give you a little bit more information. In this case, we'll do ls minus l, and as you can see, the minus l puts it in a more readable format where we can see more information. It's in a list. So for example, if we had multiple files and folders, they may just be placed next to each other. But here it would list them, and we could see information such as what user and what group they belong to. Right here, we're able to see that. We're also able to see some information such as whether we can execute or what kind of file or folder it is based on this information. We're going to go on to that detail further along the line. But something I want to show you before we get started, because there's so many different variations depending on the distribution you're using or the OS, and I want to make sure that you know how to access resources on your machine, even if because the commands might be different based on the distribution, the version you're using. So we're going to jump right in with me showing you two simple ways in order to get more information about the commands you're using. So one common way to get more information about your command is by using the help parameter, which when used with a command will give you detailed information about that command. Let's give it a try. So we'll do ls, then we're going to do help. Now there's a lot of output here, and in future episodes I'm going to show you how to format that output so it's more readable. But this is just for reference. As you can see, we have a lot of information here. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom up a little. And in particular, up here you can see, we're going to scroll all the way up to right when it first gave us the output. So this is where we typed in the command here. And if you look, it shows us how it can be used. So for example, we could put in optional parameters, and we can input a file, and it even gives us a short description about the command. And this is right underneath after we type the help, and it says this command ls lists information about the files, the current directory by default. So when we do ls by default, it's listing the files in the current directory by default. This is very useful to know, and it also goes through a lot of other information, such as, we have the -a or -all, which will show all directories or files even if they're hidden. And for example, typically when they're hidden, they might have a period at the start of them. And it also says some other things, like let's go down to the one that we just used. So we have the -l, and in this instance it's used to, it says use a long listing format. So it gives you a list format for better readability, so you can more easily read the files and directories that are in your current directory. Now I want to show you another way to get to this information. So here we're going to hit clear, which is a common command to clear up the terminal. And now there's another command that also provides similar but useful information, and that's the man command, which stands for manual. So let's give it a try. We'll do man. And now the manual command takes a parameter in the form of a command. So in this case, if we want to learn more about the ls command, we want the manual for the ls command. So we're going to do man ls. And as you can see, it actually shows us, I actually scrolled with my mouse there. You don't want to do that. You want to hit the up and down arrows in order to navigate this. So if we look at the top, it says the name of the command, and it says it lists the directory contents. It says that right here. and it gives us similar information such as like the parameters it can take. As we scroll down, it shows it gives us a description of it just like before. It shows us the parameters that we can use just like before, and if we scroll down, we're able to go down far enough where we can see right here the same parameter that we used earlier. So if you're ever unsure and you're trying to find out more about a command, you can use these in order to learn more, including about what the command is capable of, what parameters you can input. And this is all very useful information, especially when you're exploring different distributions and different operating systems. And in a future episode, I'm even going to show you what folders you can visit in order to learn what commands are already on your machine. Because every distribution might have different commands pre-installed, but ls is a very common command, and the other commands as well that we're going to be going over today should, for the most part, already be installed in your machine. So if you're wondering how can I leave this prompt, because right now, as you notice when I was using my mouse to interact, we got some sound. If you look right down here, it says you can press H for help or Q for quit. So you're just going to want to make sure you're clicked on your prompt. And then all I'm doing right here is clicking the Q button on my keyboard. And it takes us right out of there. So if you're interested in learning more about commands, like we mentioned, you can use these tools to learn more. And if you use the manual command, just make sure that you don't get stuck in there, because you can very easily hit the Q key, which is going to exit you out of there. Now, we're going to continue to learn more about commands, and we're not going to use the help parameter or the manual command for every single command we're using. But if you want to learn more, feel free to explore and experiment. So, as we did before, we used the ls command. We can see there's a test folder there. Now, when we used the help parameter, we were able to see that the ls command can take a file as a parameter, and it'll give us details about that file or folder's contents. So in this particular case, if we use ls on test folder, you can see that I have already created a test folder in this current directory, and in this directory we have a test file. Now, if we want to move into this directory, it's as simple as using a command that's very common on the other operating systems, cd, change directory. So we're going to change our directory to the test folder directory. And you may notice right here that this looks a little different than what we're used to when it comes to directories. So this right here is a special character. It's called the tilde character, tilde, and it signifies your home directory. So that's why you can see it up here. We're in our home directory. We've been in our home directory up till now, and when we changed our directory, we're now in the test folder directory. And if I use ls, we can see the test file is in this directory. So that's useful information. If you're ever exploring the operating system and you just want to get back to your home directory, you can do change directory and use that tilde, which for me is at the top left of my keyboard, and you're going to want to hit shift, otherwise you're going to get the backtick character. And if you look, it takes us right back to our home directory, and I can verify this by using the ls command, which shows the test folder once again. But this is just for demonstration purposes. I want to show you a little bit more about file management in this episode. So we're going to change directory to the test folder, and then we're going to clear the window because we don't need to see all this up here. So now that we're in the test folder, we're going to list again, but this time we're going to use the L parameter. And you may have noticed prior that when we were in our home directory and we listed the test folder with this parameter, it had a D at the start. That signifies that it's a directory. In this case, there's no D because it's a file. And as you can see, it still gives us some more detailed information, such as the user and the group and the date and everything. So we're going to go straight into reading the contents of the file. Now this is a new command, and I'm going to be showing a few commands here. A command that we can use to read a file is the cat command. Now let's learn a little bit about the cat command before we use it. We're going to use the manual cat in order to learn. So as we can see here, it says the cat command concatenates files and prints them in standard output. So what does that mean? Well, essentially it takes the contents of a file and outputs them. So let's give this a try. Here we're going to hit Q in order to quit the manual page. And then we're going to do cat test file. And look, it has some contents. It says this is a test file. Now I'm going to show you how to create that folder and that file in this demonstration. I'm mostly just showing you these tools beforehand so you can start to get comfortable with using them and learning more about what they're capable of. So I actually want to change back to the home directory. And in this case, we're going to clear because I want to clear up some room in the terminal. And now let's do ls again. We can see the folders there. Now in Linux, when you want to remove a file or folder, you can use the rm command. That's for remove. And I'm not going to use the manual on it or the help parameter, but feel free to explore because there's just so many different parameters that you can input, and it's capable of so much more than just what you see at the start. So we're going to remove rm test folder. And it says that we can't do it because it's a directory. So what we're going to do here is we're going to do rm -r test folder. And this is a special parameter that's meant to remove something recursively, which means it removes the folder and the files. So rm by default is not able to remove a folder unless you maybe do a force remove or do this recursive remove. And if you're unsure about anything we're doing here, like I said, check it out. And you know what? Even just for learning purposes, we're going to check it out right now. And right here, before I even go anywhere, because this is the output for the help, we can see right here -r, recursive, remove directories and their contents recursively. This means if we had an assortment of files in that directory, the test folder directory, it would remove every single item in that directory. And you want to be careful here, because if you have some directories that are important to you, or some files, if you recursively remove them, it may remove some things that you care about. So you want to make sure that you're using these utilities properly here. So we're going to clear, and then we're going to use ls. And as we can see, there's no contents here. That's because we have removed the directory. And I'm going to show you how to recreate it here. So we're going to do make directory. This is the make directory command. mkdir. So make directory, test folder, enter. Now let's check to see if that directory has been created in our current folder. And we're going to use the -l parameter in order to get some more information. See, there we go. The test folder has been recreated and this is the current time and date for me. And as we can see, it has the D initial, so we know it's a directory. So the make directory command is useful for just making directories, and we're able to verify that with the ls command. Now, I'm going to show you how to create a file here. And unlike the make directory command, which is readable in a way where it might click a little better, we're going to use another command to create a file, which may not necessarily make sense right away, but with practice, you're going to perfect it. It's the touch command. Now, touch is commonly used if you want to create a file, and really can be used to create a file with any extension. But in this case, we're just going to create a simple file called test file. And we're going to put this in the test folder. So let me show you how we're going to do that. We're going to do touch, and then we're going to do test folder, And I'm typing test folder because I want to input the file in the test folder directory. So we're going to use this /. And I just want to emphasize that depending on the operating system you're using, you may want to do a / or a \. It depends. But here we're using the /. We're going to use touch test folder test file. Enter. Now I want to check to see if the test folder contains the test file. So let's use ls-l test folder. And as we can see, the test file has been created, and that's the current time for me. So this shows that this is not the prior folder or file. These are new files and folders that we have just created. So there's an assortment of utilities in Linux that you can use, and this should work in most distributions, whether you're using the ls command, the make directory command, the remove command, and this will add a lot to your utility belt in terms of file management and administration even. Further in the series, we're going to go over how to script these sort of things. And there are different shells depending on what you're using, but we're gonna go over those various shells in this series. So let's go ahead and clear the window. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna move into the test folder directory. So we're changing directory, cd, into test folder. And I'm gonna show you a little tip here. If you're trying to move into a directory, or you wanna maybe use the cat command to read a file, if you hit tab here, it'll auto-complete what you're typing based on what it thinks the result will be. So if, like right there, in order to do that, I didn't type that out, space TE tab, it auto-completed to test folder. So this is a useful tool if you're trying to navigate throughout the command line, as it can save you time and save you from spelling errors. So I hit tab here in order to auto-complete. We're going to hit enter. And now we're in our test folder, and we can verify that with the ls command. As you can see, in our folder, we have the test file. Now, if we cat the test file, we see there's no contents. Now, if we wanted to add contents to this file, how would we do that? Well, there are text editors typically pre-installed with distributions, and there are other ways to add the contents to the file. I want to get started with the text editors early on in this series because they're so powerful, and some of them even have scripting capabilities. So depending on what you're using, some of the most common ones, for example, are Vim or Nano. And today we're going to be using Nano. And in order to use this, it's almost like Notepad. Like if you're on Windows, you could just type Notepad in your command prompt and it's going to open Notepad. In this case, we type Nano, but the main difference is that Nano is a command line text editor, which means there's no graphical user interface. It does it from the command line. So let me show you what I'm explaining here. We use a Nano test file. Now this is the Nano interface, which is accessible through the command line, which means, for example, earlier we discussed Ubuntu Server, which is different than Ubuntu. Ubuntu Server does not provide a graphical user interface always. So when you're interacting with compute devices that don't provide a graphical user interface, you may need to use the command line to edit files and make changes. So in this particular case, that's what I'm showing you here. And you can see down here, there's this special caret character with the G, or special caret character with the X. That caret character, that's control on your keyboard. So if we wanted to exit this right now, I just hit Control X and it took me right out. Now that's something you want to pay attention to, because as a beginner it can be a little confusing when you're using these text editors exactly how to get out of the text editors. So we're going to re-enter it though, because I wanted to edit the contents of this file. So we're going to do Nano test file, and now If you look, we could just type, type whatever we want. Here, we're gonna type what we typed before. This is a test file. Alright. And if we want, we can still do Control X because we're exiting. And it asks us, save modified buffer. What does that mean? It's just asking you if you want to save your edits to this file. And in this case we do. And it shows that the Y character on your keyboard is yes. And it shows some other options there, but we're going to go with the Y character. And you may notice that there's no caret symbol here. You're just hitting Y here. So we'll hit Y. And now what it's asking is, don't be confused. There's some stuff down here. You can use some of this if you want, but that's not what it's asking here. Right here it says file name to write. Now if you look, I could edit the file name here. If I hit backspace, as you can see right here, I'm actually editing the name of the file. So through Nano, you can edit the file itself, and you can edit the name of the file. In this case, we're just going to rename it to file, and then we'll hit enter. Save file under different name. It's asking to confirm if this is what we want to do. And we do want to save it under a different name, so we're going to hit Y here. And alright, now let's give it a try with ls and see if the name of the file has been changed. So actually it looks like it saved a copy of it. So if we had named the file test file, it would have overwritten the original file. Because if we look here, if we cat the test file, there's no content. But if we read the contents of the original file, we can see that we have edited the file. So this is something important that you're going to want to note, is when you're using the editor, if you're saving your content, it might not save directly to that file unless you use the same name as that file and you're in the same directory. Just some things that you may want to pay attention to here. So in this case, we're going to remove the test file, and then we're going to list the directory to see what the changes are. We can see that we have removed it. So let's clear the terminal. I'm going to show you one final command here. And this command can be used on directories or folders, but in this case, we're just going to use it on the file. This is the move command. Now, move is useful for moving files or directories, but it's almost like a Swiss Army knife in that it can do more than just one thing. And it could even rename files as you move them. So like we mentioned, a lot of these tools have a lot of uses, and it may lead to unexpected results while you're using them. Such as when we use Nano and we change the name of the file, it didn't change the original file, it created a new version of the file with a new name. Small details to pay attention to. So in this case, when we use move, which is spelled like this, MV, we're going to move the file, and in prior videos we've mentioned that 2 periods is the parent directory, or in this case it would be the home directory, which could be represented by the tilde, but we're going to use the 2 periods here. This is the same directory because our parent directory right now is our home directory. So we're going to move our file to the parent directory, and this takes 2 parameters. It takes the first parameter being the file that you want to move, and the second parameter being the location or the destination that you wish to move it to. So this could be a full path on another drive, and it'll move the file there. But let's give it a try here. Alright, so we move the file, it looks like, into our parent directory. Let's double check. Alright, with ls we can see that we have not had any results, so we're going to change directory into our home directory, which right now, as I mentioned, is our parent directory. And we're going to use ls again. And look, we can see the file is there, and we're even going to cat the file or read it in order to make sure that it's the same one, it has the same contents. And look at that, it has everything we need. So a lot of useful tools here that you can have under your belt in order to move files, edit files, read them. I mean, and typically Linux is a file system unlike any other, where, for example, even drivers and other things in Linux, they're all accessible through the file system. Not everything is accessible in the file system in Windows. There are some barricades in Windows where you can't edit every single part of the system, but in Linux, everything is a file. So you're able to edit almost every part of the system by editing the files in it. So that's why this first episode I'm emphasizing the importance of moving, editing, reading, and manipulating the file system, because as we continue in our episodes, we're going to create our own commands, we're going to create our own scripts, and we're going to edit. I'm even going to show at some point a graphical user interface that you could change from one graphical user interface to another, because in Linux, the GUI is a desktop environment. It's not just the Windows environment. You have the GNOME environment, you have the KDE environment. I mean, and that's just two of them. There's an assortment, and they all have similar features, like they all might have a terminal and a control panel and an item list. But you really can customize every part of Linux to your heart's content. And just uh, to be thorough here, we're going to remove the items that we have created, because uh, we don't necessarily need these items in future episodes, and we're going to be going over other content as well. So any of the things that we've created now, we're going to create again and again through different commands, and we're going to enhance them and do all sorts of stuff. So we'll do -R for the test folder, ls. And look, just like that, we've cleared everything in our current home directory. Now, you're not just limited to your home directory. I just want to mention this real quick before we finish up here. You can change directory into your parent directory. And now let's do ls. See, so this is actually a folder that contains the users. And in this case, we only have one user, Azask, and that's the user that I'm signed into. And in this case right here, this is the name of my desktop, or the name of my machine. So it's saying that I'm signed in, or in this case, it's actually the server as well. It has like a whole different names that you can call it. It's the server, and we're signed in as this user. Now let's change directory again. It's another parent directory. And if you look, this no longer has the tilde right here. Instead, it just has the slash. Now, this is the root directory. That's what this slash indicates, when it's just that. So let's do ls here. And you can see that we have a whole assortment of folders and files in each one of these, and this is what we're going to be going over in future episodes. The things that I've mentioned, we're going to be going over like that content with the desktop environments, using different flavors of Linux. And simply, as you can see, there's all these folders, and each one of these folders has different content, with some maybe containing like the drivers for your system, or the boot files, or even commands that are in your system. And you can even edit a file and folder, which by default will change what files and folders new users have. And we're going to also go over user management as well. So there's so much to explore here. I'm excited to go over all this with you guys. And whether it's the popular security tools or automation tools, we're going to make sure to go over all that here. And if you're interested in learning more, hit the subscribe button. We'll also be exploring other tools and utilities unrelated to Linux on the channel. So you have that to look forward to, and stay tuned, because this is just the first episode here and we're getting started. A lot of exciting stuff. Looking forward to seeing you guys in the next one.